Water, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. That's a famous quote from this poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, although the original quote was water, water everywhere and nor a drop to drink, which is a little dated, but I still think it could be used. I think it'd have more effect, actually. What do you want for dinner tonight? Tacos? Nor spaghetti. I like it. I think I'll use it. Anyway, this poem is great. It is wonderful. It is confusing. I was so confused when I was reading this, and I had to read it several times to finally start to understand it. And it's only 29 pages or so, so it wasn't, and it's in poetry form. So it wasn't too hard to read that many times. Basically, from what I understand of this poem, it is a natural versus supernatural. It is a sin versus penance. It is a God allegory. On a deeper level, I think it may be Coleridge writing about the ancient mariner being lonely, in terms of Coleridge coming to terms with his own loneliness, which he has written about in journals and letters. The story starts with three young men, merry, gay, happy, walking down this road on their way to a wedding where they know they will have a feast, they will have drinks, they will have dancing, they will have merriment. They're in good moods. When out of nowhere, a grizzled, I quote, grizzled ancient man grabs hold of one of the young men on his wrist, and he says, "There was a ship." Ooh. The young man looks in his eye and sees a glittering eye, and he knows that that man has a story to tell. So instead of going off and enjoying his wedding, he chooses to sit down and listen to what this man has to say, this sort of crazed man on the street. I got to thinking, if I had a choice between listening to some crazy person on the street or going off to a wedding where I know I would have food, cake, dancing, champagne, I don't know what I would do. I'd like to say I'd sit and listen to the man's story, but honestly, I think I'd go to the wedding. If I'm ever in that position, I'll let you all know. So the young man, it doesn't say what the other two men do. I think they may have made, like, you sit here, we're going off to the wedding. It just kind of talks about this one man. This one young man sits, and he wants to listen to this man's tale because he knows it's going to be a good tale. So this ancient mariner starts off with, "There was a ship." I have to say in that tone. I don't know why. It sounds like Charlton Heston or something. And he begins to explain that it left the harbor with 200 plus sailors, great spirits, great weather. They were all just on this perfect ship. When a few days in, the ship reaches the equator. And he talks about the equator a few times. He says, once we hit the equator, there was a great storm. This storm blew and raged and tossed and turned the ship, and they wound up somewhere in the South Pole, where they said they were among ice, calm patch of the sea, where there was snow and icebergs, and they realized that they were the only living things in this part of the sea. It starts to turn a little weird. An albatross, which is a giant seabird, appears. The seamen take this as a sign of good luck. Albatross have often been a very good luck symbol for sailors. They even have said that they embody the souls of dead sailors. So this huge albatross appears, and the seamen are elated. They think it's a very good sign of good luck. They feed it. The bird follows them. The ice, and when the albatross appears, the ice breaks, the winds pick up, and then the albatross follows them, playing with the ship and the sailors feed it. At this point, the young man sees a very sorrowful look in the ancient mariner's face, and he said, "What is it?" And he says, "I shot and killed the albatross with my crossbow." A complete unexplained killing. So completely unexplained why he kills this albatross. And it sets into motion this cycle of sin and penance and just this craziness that starts to go down. After he shoots the albatross with his crossbow, strange things start to happen. They come to a very, very still standpoint. And I think even one of the things in here says it was like being in a painting. It was so still. The ship wasn't rocking, wasn't moving. The water was just inky, black, placid glass. The sun is described as so hot. And it doesn't really say how long they're there, but you get the feeling that they're there for a while. They start to get incredibly thirsty. And that's where that water line comes in that I said earlier. Water, water everywhere with not a drop to drink. There's literally water everywhere and they can't drink it because it is the ocean. There's no rain. They're not collecting any water. They're at the standstill. All because he shot this albatross, the sailors think. They start to give the ancient mariner evil looks. Kind of like, you did this to us. What did you do to us? You cursed us. They're just being completely tortured by the sun and lack of water. And you're wondering if they're going crazy, which I think they're going crazy, or if what they start to see is really happening. At one point, the ancient mariner says that he sees slimy things crawling up out of the sea, and they're terrifying and ghastly, and they're coming to get him. I think that the slimy things were probably the backs of dolphins, maybe shark fins, maybe a whale, but he's maybe hallucinating so much that he thinks these things that he thinks God is sending out of these slimy creatures that God is sending out of the sea to get him are these evil things, when they probably are just sea animals, but he's going bonkers. He says, I bit myself. And he's crazed and he has blood. He actually bit himself to drink his own blood a little bit to wet his mouth. That's how intense the situation is. Sailors then completely turn on the mariner and they take the albatross and they force the mariner to wear this heavy, huge rotting albatross around his neck. For several, what you think are days, with everyone going crazy, they're hating this ancient mariner. He's wearing this huge heavy bird around his neck. He says he sees a dot off in the distance, something small approaching. And everyone is very excited. Oh my goodness, we see something, we see something. He saw something, the ancient mariner saw something. We think it's a sail coming toward us. When they realize, wait, there is zero wind. We're literally at a standstill in the ocean. How is this ship sailing towards us with no wind? Then they know that something's about to happen. They think this is a cursed ship, which it winds up being a cursed ship, ran by a skeleton crew carrying Death. Now, Death, at least from what I interpreted Death as, happens to be a woman with very bright red lips and blonde hair, which I think was really cool, coming to take the souls of these sailors. It is a ghostly vessel. When the ship appears next to the ancient mariner's ship, 200 of the sailors, all of them except the ancient mariner himself, thud on the deck, drop dead on the deck. Ancient mariner is alone, completely alone, and completely alive. And at one point, this gets really creepy. The mariner explains that the dead sailor's eyes follow him. They lay still, but the eyes follow his every move, which would make a really good movie. I think this actually might have been made into a movie several years ago. I'll have to look into it. So these dead sailors are watching him with their eyes, and Death has appeared and taken the souls of these sailors as because he killed this albatross bird, he thinks. So by moonlight, the weeks go on, and he cannot die. I think a week goes on. The ancient mariner cannot die. He tries, and he cannot die. In this ravaged state of mind, by moonlight one night, he realizes that this is a difference between supernatural and natural, and that God is actually trying to help him. And that he is able to pray again, because he was not able to pray before when he had the albatross hanging from his neck and the dead sailors and the ghost and death were after him. He couldn't pray. By moonlight, this is very important, he starts to pray. Once he prays, the albatross falls from his neck, goes into the water of the ocean. The sky and wind, everything starts to pick up, and we see the ship sort of start to come alive again. It was a crucial moment. When the ship starts to start have movement and the winds pick up, it starts to rain and he is able to drink, which helps his sanity, keeps him alive. It's pouring rain. Then it's raining. The sailors sort of that are dead, grown, I'm thinking of them kind of like zombies. They rise up without saying anything and start to get to work on the ship. They're setting the sails, they're getting everything going. Then the poem sort of goes off into this weird realm where he encounters this hermit. And I was utterly confused about the hermit. The hermit may have been a symbol of his salvation. I think that's what the hermit was supposed to do. And after he is atoned for killing a godlike creature, the symbol of God, I think is what the albatross was supposed to be, represent the soul of God. It's even hung like a crucifix around the ancient mariner's neck. They are able to go back to their harbor and get off the ship, I think. At this point, the young man listening to the story is just completely aghast. And he says that he is sadder but wiser for having heard the ancient mariner's tale. This poem was a very good poem. If you want to get into this poem, I would suggest listening it to on Audible and perhaps reading it a few times. It takes a couple times to be like, wait, what is happening? Not only because it was written in 1797, it's pretty old, but because it's a complicated, complex poem. I hope you enjoyed my review. Thank you, BookTube. I'll see you soon. Thanks.